Hey, I am Mustafa Sharif. Thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. I'm really happy, super excited because in this episode we're going to talk about placemaking in the Nordics. It's a guidebook to co-creating safe, attractive public spaces in the Nordic region. I have the pleasure to welcome my guests, and they were part of creating this great guidebook. So let's start. Welcome to Urbanistica podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We start with you, Petra. So how would you like to introduce yourself? And please tell us, what are you passionate about?
Right. I am called Petra Svensson Gleisner. I actually am an architect, but I've been working with marketing and business development for quite a few years now. And I work at this firm called Link Architecture, and that's why I got involved in this project Placemaking in the Nordics that we're going to talk about. And what am I passionate about? Actually, it sort of coincides very well with this project because I am really interested in sort of the relationship between cities and how we live our lives and how they affect us and how we organize the urban space around us. And I think it's actually really, really important how we organize our cities.
Yes, of course. It's going to be a super interesting talk. So, Marcus, how would you like to introduce yourself?
So I'm Marcus Andersson. I am co-founder of Future Place Leadership, and we are a consultancy working with places to create better, more attractive, more sustainable places, if you like. We're kind of a Nordic consultancy, so the Nordic region is our home market. I'm also very passionate about places, and cities and rural places and urban places, all kinds of places. I am passionate about creating better places for people, but also for business activities, more livable and more lovable places, if you like.
Yes. So much love and passion to the cities.
Exactly.
And welcome back again, Cornelis, to Urbanistica podcast.
Thank you. So my name is Cornelis Uittenbogaard. I'm working as an urban planner and researcher at the Safer Sweden Foundation. So basically trying to connect urban planning to safety issues and how you can plan for better places. And of course, placemaking is an important part in this whole, keeping places alive, keeping places safe in the long term also. So that's, basically it started out when I was studying at KTH, was studying urban planning there. Got involved in a project focusing on the public transport, metro station in Stockholm, and how people perceive safety there, which turned into my PhD in the end. So basically from having no affection to safety issues at all, it turned out to be my main job in the end. But I'm very glad because it's very interesting to talk to people on how they perceive places, how they feel places work, and how it affects their abilities to be in a place, So it's kind of cool. And then, from my childhood, you can say I also have kind of a thing for like this kind of how people move around or things move around. From like being a kid, I wanted to be like this air traffic controller or like logistic person. So like guiding planes. Now I'm more like guiding people around the city. So
very cool and interesting story. Well, would you mind to tell us about the background of this guidebook? How did you meet and the other partners? How did everything start and what is the aim of it?
Right. I think it was back in 2018. We started looking closer at placemaking. We saw lots of potential in the discipline for Nordic places. We also saw that there might be a reason to modify placemaking a bit to better suit Nordic conditions. We got in touch with Link at first, who also brought in Safer Sweden and Cornelis. And we realized that we could find some common ground around this notion that placemaking is really has a lot of potential for Nordic places, but we kind of need to tweak and maybe innovate a bit so they would suit the Nordic region. And that led us to this project Placemaking in the Nordics, which is a project model that we had worked with in the past at Future Place Leadership, where we invite many different actors, stakeholders from all the Nordic countries to work together on a challenge and kind of innovate and co-create new solutions together. So in this case, we brought along, I think it was 16 partners from 4 countries. So Sweden, Finland, Norway, and the Netherlands, who showed an interest in working with the Nordics. And as it happens, Cornelis is from the Netherlands, so that was the Dutch link already there. And we met with these people, we workshopped, we co-created, we did case studies, and we learned about placemaking, and we tried to look at how can we Nordify it, if you like. And that led to this handbook and guidebook.
Yeah. And who is the final user of this handbook?
I would say mainly 3 target groups. The first one would be municipalities and cities, their administration. Second one would be property owners and property developers. And third one would be what we call place collaboration organizations. So business improvement districts, city associations, those type of organizations that already gather stakeholders around the table, like the municipality, property owners, retailers, residents. So these 3 I would single out.
Yeah. So Marcus, tell us more about what is the Nordic placemaking about, the model that you created.
Right. So first of all, we figured that we need kind of a circular model for working with places, because a place never gets finished, really. So we wanted to go beyond the usual project perspective of having a starting point and an ending point. That's why we opted for this circular cyclical model, if you like. It rests on 3 basic phases. We call them mobilization, creation, and management. And in the first mobilization phase, it's mostly about engaging stakeholders, getting stakeholders on board in your work, understanding the place, understanding the relationship between people and the place, and the desire of the people who live and work in the place and use the place. It's about creating a common vision for your work to improve the place. In the second phase, you go from what we call short-term experiments, because the first phase is a lot about testing new things, piloting new solutions, new activities, new types of design. In the second phase, you will have made a lot of experiences and lessons learned from your first piloting and experimentation. Then you scale up your activities. You create projects around them. For that, you need leadership and you need funding to those projects. You need more stakeholders on board. You need more permanent design, so you can take your first experiments, temporary designs, and you can improve them or make new designs which build on the first experiences. The third phase is more about the long-term management and governance of a place. We saw that our clients and partners quite often worked with projects, and they launched project after project, but they didn't have an idea of how to solve the more long-term management issue. That's why we added that phase. And that's all about collective action, if you like, how you get the different stakeholders to work together to improve the place in the longer run, in the process. So you get beyond and you bridge this project perspective. So you just don't end up doing another project, rather focusing on the improvements in the long term. So that's the basic idea of this model.
Yeah. So Petra, should everything be set or decided from the early beginning in this model when you work on a placemaking project? Especially here in the Nordic, we like to have things fixed already from the beginning.
Yeah, we do, right? Well, I think that's sort of maybe the biggest takeaway we've had from this project is the idea of actually working with prototyping and experimentation and testing things. It's, as Marcus said, it's a really good way of getting things happening, to get people involved in projects and sort of testing what's going on, because place, as we all know, it's never really finished. So it's not really about doing a project and then ending it. It's like right now it's good to have a stage here, and next year it might be really good to do something else, right? So this experimentation is also about, I think, making a place live for a long time.
Yeah, and I think the experimentation is also a thing that suits Nordic places, especially, perhaps places in other parts of the world too. because we realized that one main challenge for Nordic places is to get started with the placemaking efforts. And we can probably trace that back to an over-reliance on the public sector. Everyone looks at the municipality and asks and wants the municipality to get started with efforts to improve the place. So if you do a short-term experiment, you kind of lower the threshold to get started. You make it easier, less dramatic. Less financing is needed, less taxpayers' money is needed, less time is needed. And you can make some changes quickly, you create results, and thereby create legitimacy for your collaboration. You show that it works. You create trust between the stakeholders. They will work better together, basically.
And also trust with the citizens, I think. I mean, we even have this term in Swedish, which is dialogue tiredness, if you have heard it. It's like when people work sort of in, we call it the million program sort of areas from the 60s and 70s, which are sort of socially vulnerable. And it's been so many people there talking about so many things happening, like it's starting to get hard to get people to the table and actually talk and have sort of involved processes. And I think if you actually do something and you see it happening, it's also a way of sort of showing that it's not just talk, it's actually also action.
Exactly. This is what I notice when I work as an urban planner. People are really tired of just talking, because also there's no point of talking if no one is listening. So I guess placemaking providing a great model to listen as well to the people, to the community. So Cornelis, there are the three aspects that make a place attractive, and safety is one of them. So what are the other aspects, and also how can placemaking contribute to increase the safety?
We, from the beginning, we had quite long discussions on how to put this project together and what are the Nordic values, what is placemaking for us. But in the end, we found out that, basically it is about creating an attractive place. And for a place to be attractive, it needs to be safe. If you wouldn't feel safe, you wouldn't go to a place, first of all. But secondly, the place also needs to have a certain identity. It needs to be recognizable in a certain way, or it needs to be attractive for you. Something unique, basically. And that doesn't mean that every place needs to be something really outstanding by itself. You cannot create a million places within a small town, but there needs to be something that attracts people, of course. And then it's also about creating value, creating local value. And of course, making a place more attractive, make it more safe so more people use the place, use the functions around the place. The shops, for instance, the other facilities will increase the real estate value, but it will also create a social value for the place. The place will be more sociable. It will create more interactions in the place. So you will create more connections as well. You will create a local society in the end, basically. So that's basically three values that we built this whole project on. So placemaking contributes to creating a safer place, a place with a higher value and identity, basically.
Yeah. You had many stakeholders as a part of creating this guidebook. So how was, let's say, the feminist urban planning or planning from child perspective included in this project?
Yeah, because placemaking is basically about creating a place for people. It's all about the ones that are using the place, but actually you should also look at the ones that are not using the place. So from this perspective, we have tried to look at different tools or different concepts or a certain mindset on how to look at a place to make it really a place for all. Like from a safety perspective, you often see that places are, there's only a certain group doing certain activities in a place, or a place is actually dominated by a certain group, so other people do not feel welcome there. So you would, in order for placemaking to be successful, you would like the place to be welcome for everybody, that everybody feels welcome, that there's something to do for everybody. So we have been looking during our workshops with the participants also at the thinking of feminist urban planning, in which you try to actually twist the thinking a bit during the process. Try not to directly go to the obvious groups that are using the place or the groups with the highest voice, but try to identify the groups that are less strong in their voice, the groups that are not really present, basically. But we also have been looking at specific tools, like both digital tools on how to include different groups. Of course, like all the types of apps in which you can put forward your opinion are very useful these days, which you can recommend like certain suggestions for how to improve the place or what you would like to see in the place. But there are also certain so-called empathy tools in which you use like you try to put yourself in the perspective of like a person in a wheelchair. You try to put yourself in the perspective of a child. There are, for instance, a certain kind of games, you can say, in which you go around with a mask on a stick which is 90 centimeters high. So you stop at certain points in a certain place and you kneel down to 90 centimeters and you see actually what the kid will see when it's in the place, which is totally different than what an adult will see. So there are different tools, different ways on how to explore those different perspectives. But in the end, of course, it's all about like that people also really feel that they are part of the process, as Petra was talking about. They need to see a result. It's not just about getting their opinion, but they need to be part of really developing the place. It's obviously, it is important to include those not present groups in the participation process and try to get their opinion, because it's mainly also those groups that do not feel safe because they don't feel welcome to use the place. Statistics, they do show that women feel more unsafe than men. So placemaking, actually, it is kind of a tool to reach out to those groups as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And Marcus, is it a huge difference between the Nordic placemaking model and let's say the other models? We can take, for instance, the model in USA. I know placemaking have a common ground, but what are the differences? If you can highlight them.
I think Petra can also add to this, but I'll give the first shot. So we took a lot of inspiration from the most kind of internationally widely accepted model, which is called the PPS model, Project for Public Spaces, which I think a lot of people have heard about and seen. We then tried to see what are the kind of unique features of the Nordic region to which we need to adapt the model. And we arrived at especially two things from a more process-oriented view. And the first one was exactly the experimentation, that we put more emphasis early on in the process on experiments. And that was because it's a very good way to get started. It's a very good way to understand the place better, to engage stakeholders through experiments, build trust between the stakeholders. And then you can, on the back of those first experiences and learnings, build and kind of scale up your work in more kind of a project fashion. The second part that we saw a need for was precisely the more long-term issue. How do you ensure that there is long-term governance and management of the place? For example, in the Nordics, we don't have any BID laws, any laws for business improvement districts. Which is usually a quite good way of governing a place or managing a place in the longer term, and also financing the common work. So we have a collective action challenge, if you like, a challenge to get the different stakeholders to work together. So that's why we also put a lot of emphasis on this third step in our circular model, which is the management phase, how you ensure long-term management of the place and go beyond the project perspective. So these are the two kind of more unique features of the Nordic model in relationship to the more North American global model, if you like. Petra, there are also things, climate and darkness and cold that you can touch upon.
Yeah, right. I mean, usually when you see pictures from placemaking projects, it's sunny. It might be sort of a beach somewhere on the plaza or something, and that's all very nice. But as you all know, we have a sort of challenging climate here in the Nordics if you want people to actually spend a lot of time outdoors. I mean, it's cold and it's dark, pretty big part of the year. in the Nordics, it's even more important to actually program for all seasons. And I think, it's easy to talk about winter activities, but usually we need to be more active outside when it's cold, for instance. So think more in activities during the winter period is one way. And the other one is that you might actually need to be able to sit down somewhere when it's cold outside and warm up a little bit and still be within the place. And I think it's actually surprising how rarely we do have these kind of sort of warming huts or whatever outside. So that is sort of one thing. And the other thing is, of course, achieving critical mass. If you read sort of William White, for instance, who's sort of forefather for placemaking, he talks about the problems of having too dense, density and too many people in a place and how you think about that. But we really have the problems of having enough people. That's sort of the biggest challenge, especially outside the city cores, right? So it's a lot about sort of having city structure, I think, that assembles people and also helps populating the spaces and makes it more sociable. And I know you actually had one of my biggest idols here not long ago, Jan Gehl, and I don't think it's not sort of a coincidence that he focuses so much on sort of populating and assembling people to achieve this critical mass. And that is something we really need to focus on in the Nordics as well, I think.
Yeah. And Marcus, I go back to you with a question that you gather the different partners to create this amazing guidebook. The question is, do we have a really active placemaking network, let's say in the Nordic and in Stockholm?
Not as active as in the rest of Europe. There is a European placemaking movement. It's called European Placemaking. And there is kind of a Nordic sub-chapter, which I think to date has been more of an informal gathering place, meeting place for those who are taking interest in this. So it's been driven quite a lot by, passion and kind of a grassroots movement. And the same goes for Stockholm. There are a few people that I know, a colleague of mine, for example, that are very active in more informal networking, informal projects around this, which also has more of the character of a grassroots movement. So not yet, but we really see a need for more networking and more experience sharing around this between different actors.
Yeah,
I think
So in the future, you see the potential of creating an active network, at least in Stockholm, to start with.
Definitely. And I think one explanation why there hasn't been a network is that there's no common terminology. So you have a lot of people and actors, property owners, and the rest who work on placemaking, but they don't call it placemaking. So I think just finding common ground and start talking about the same things would be a good start. So I think all this work that happens around social inclusiveness, social sustainability, it's in essence about placemaking to a large extent. So I think we just need to find each other and start talking the same language, and then more people will join, basically.
Yes, exactly. This is what I was talking about with many of the placemakers here in Stockholm, that we should take the opportunity that Stockholm, we are not so that many, and it's easy to find each other. We know each other. And now we have a great guidebook, so now we can speak the same language. So why not just we sit on the one table, share the experience, talk about what is next. So maybe after the summer, we can meet for an open meeting and talk about how do we activate a network.
Definitely. Great idea.
That would be wonderful.
So Petra, we talked about this in the beginning, that we in the Nordics like to have things fixed. Do you think that in Stockholm we are not so brave enough to try these temporary things because we are not sure about if they're going to be successful project or not?
I'm not so sure it's actually about bravery. I think it's a bit about mindset, and I think it's a bit about how we are structured. And I think those go together. Of course, we structure the way we think, right? So I think, we do have this really strong public sector with a strong administration, and you have to get all the permits and everything, and it's not very easy usually to get all the permits. So working in this way, sort of prototyping and experimenting and doing things short term, it's like the whole municipalities are not set up for doing that, I think. It's like we do a project and then it's going to be there, it's going to be there forever until we do a new project. So we don't think about the temporary or the possibilities of the temporary so much either, I think. So I don't think it's not about bravery. I don't think it's about not wanting to. It's more about culture and structures. And actually also sort of one of the findings we've had in this project is because the municipalities are really not organized for this, it's really, really hard when you try to do something sort of temporary. It takes, in Sweden we have this expression fire cells, like it's sort of a local hero who really drives something home and wants to do it a lot. For instance, I mean, we've seen this in many municipalities, but for instance, Haninge Kommun, I know they did this sort of, they have this huge construction site in central Haninge, which will be there for many, many years. And it's just next to the commuter trains. And they wanted to make it feel safer and nicer. So they did sort of an intervention with some steps to sit on and made the tunnel nicer with decorations on the wall and stuff like that. And there was so many obstacles that they could not have foreseen. Like, who's going to maintain the steps while they are there? Because it's temporary. It's really no one's responsibilities. And who's going to clean this place? It's no one's responsibility. So they ended up doing so many things that were really not sort of in their core tasks to do. And you can do it sometimes because you're really, really enthusiastic and you're really engaged in this project, but you can't do it over and over again because then you get burnt out. So I think it's also about sort of we need to start changing the way we are organized to make this happen more often.
So do you mean that we complicate things?
Not necessarily, because I don't think it's complicated. When it's a big project, it's more like we're set up for big projects and we're not set up for the temporary projects, I think. And the temporary projects becomes complicated because we're not set up for them. But the big projects are going just fine.
Yeah, I don't think that in Sweden we are afraid of doing temporary things, but it's a lot about the process. And coming from Holland, well, now living some time already in Sweden, but I could clearly see that it is a less spontaneous culture here in Sweden. So you're not really like going out just like that. Usually meetings are planned weeks or months ahead, and the whole process of getting things done is just longer. So then having to go through this process, it takes time, it takes money, also it takes a person's engagement. So you really need to have those people that really have a drive to do it. And if you don't have this drive, you don't even start the process. And it's a lot there's a lot of fika in Sweden. So you have a lot of talks about around the coffee table, and in the end you just plan a meeting for the next discussion and the next discussion and the next discussion. It's seldomly that after one meeting you directly jump into action. So I think it's not about really that we are afraid, but it's rather about really taking this step. In Haninge, for instance, they were painting the steps themselves or painting themselves there from the municipality, which they shouldn't do, of course. There should be other people who do it. But that really is only for people who are really engaged and really want to see a good result. And in the end, they got like a half result. The steps were anyways used by people drinking alcohol, for instance, or people creating a bit of unpleasant atmosphere instead of just all to have it a very nice, lively place. And then it becomes even a bigger obstacle to start the next project, because you have seen that this project has become like a bit, as we say in Swedish, sådär. So it is about the whole process, I think, and then the culture of really taking this first step that we also saw when it comes to like engaging or starting this placemaking projects. As Marcus was saying, people don't really know where to start or who to involve, who to engage. So, but that's, I think our model is going to help municipalities or organizations with that, as we have this looping model with iteration parts that you can try to start small and scale it up also when it comes to the process, trying different types of processes, trying to involve different types of actors and organizations.
I think there's actually one really more important thing when talking about placemaking and sort of the difference how we organize in Sweden, because the municipalities and the projects, there's a lot of silos, like we have the architect and we do the building, and then we have the landscape architect like you, and we do the space between the buildings, etc. And then we have someone who's planning the traffic, and it's the property owners and the municipality, and everyone's sort of looking into their own interests, sort of. But instead, we should organize everything around the place and start with the place. What does the place need, and how can everyone contribute to that? And it's not just one fire soul that should do it all. It's like everyone who's got an interest in the place. Mm. So I think we need to start to think differently about how we organize ourselves.
That would be precisely my argument, that you need to work in a more place-based manner, and we are not set up to do that in municipalities typically. And Petra mentioned a few of the departments you need to involve. And if you would organize an event on a square or in a square in a given municipality, you would need even more departments to be involved, like 5 to 10 different departments for collection of trash, access to electricity, permits. You need to talk to the police department, have a permit from them, fire department, and the rest. So even though we can't organize our work completely in a place-based department, I think we need to think in terms of a task force that we can create. Quickly create a task force that can help with everything related to one single place, to help those that want to create an activity or an event.
Yeah, exactly. And Marcus, in the placemaking, we cannot just rely on the individuals and their energy and their financing. So does the Nordics model provide a financing model to start a placemaking project?
To date, it hasn't really, I would claim. I think that's why we have this collective action challenge, that we need to build a management and governance structure which involves the different stakeholders, the municipality, the property owners, the retailers, shopkeepers, residents, and the rest. And if we can find that common model, we will also solve the financing issue. So the key here, I think, is what we call place leadership. You need individuals that are skilled in and passionate about the kind of systemic collaborative leadership to build these structures, and they need to be able to create platforms, networks, where all stakeholders can gather and take decisions and co-finance activities. So I think that's really a key challenge, to go from the idea of doing something together to actually doing it, where everyone contribute and feel that they can contribute and influence the activities. Yeah. And to make that transition into a permanent, sustainable governance structure, management structure, you need leadership, and these place leaders. And place leadership is very different from hierarchical organizational leadership.
And you're working with many municipalities and different stakeholders in the cities here in Sweden. Do you see that we are ready to take this step to make actions instead of just meeting and talking?
Yeah, definitely. It works in many places. And the reason why it works, I think, is because there has been leaders, people who want to take on this leadership to create those structures. Once you have the structures in place, people realize that it works to work together. They want to contribute, financing work with work, time and resources. So there's definitely a case to be made for it. And it's just, some places haven't had that leadership. It's also about relinquishing a bit of control from the public sector, especially the municipalities, that they want to dare to give up a bit of control to other stakeholders. I think that's an important starting point too.
Less control, more sharing, more co-creating.
Yeah, definitely.
And Petra, I believe that placemaking is not making a public space attractive. It's also contributing to something bigger, the 2030 agenda. Would you like to share with us how does it contribute to the agenda?
Yeah, I think, I didn't know this much about placemaking actually when we started this project, if I can dare say that, but I've learned so much during this project, and it sort of started to embody social sustainability to me. It's very much about inclusiveness and creating cities where people actually, where people's basic needs are met. One of our basic needs is sort of to be together with others, for instance. And placemaking is a lot about that, but also a lot about making sort of pleasant cities. And it's also about the process. So it's not just inclusive places, it's actually inclusive processes, and there's so many tools for that. So I think sort of in terms of the global agenda, it's this goal number 10. I don't remember, it's called inclusive cities and something, right? It's sort of one of the best tools we can have to work with that. But it's not only good for that. As we talked about actually earlier, me and Cornelis and Marcus, it's also a lot of focus on pedestrians and on cycling. So it's actually a city that is good for the health and for the environment as well. And also about taking care of what's already there. So there's a focus on the circular economy. So it sort of contributes to sort of health and well-being, and also sort of stopping climate change as well. So I think it's a fantastic tool.
You can add also, I think indirectly it also contributes like equality, and because making spaces accessible for everybody and welcoming, like, and less discrimination in public space by providing everybody access. It touches a lot of the goals.
Yeah, so basically it's worth to invest all this time, energy, and money in placemaking.
I think it's. I think that's also quite interesting, because it is really worth it in terms of sort of qualities for people when they live their lives. But I think it's also interesting. I'm sort of working as an architect, so I actually need people to invest in my projects as well. It's not only because I want to create a better tomorrow that people come to me or to my company. And I think the interesting thing is that when you do places that people love, it's also good for the finances as well, because if it's a good place, people are attracted to it, and then they want to pay for sort of the properties. So it's good for property owners as well. It's sort of a win-win-win scenario when everybody sort of wins, I think.
I mentioned this in many other episodes as well, that if people are part of the story, they will love to continue the story and take care of what's happening. So including them is one of absolutely important things in every project.
It's also important, like when it comes to like the qualities, or why is it worth to start with placemaking. Placemaking is a process, as we said. Even like for the Nordics, we created this circular model. So it's super important that you keep this continuity in the whole process and creating developing places. So from that perspective, it's worth also to use this as a tool to keep a long-term perspective for a place and the use of a place. And that, of course, is going to add to the value, to the users, to the attractivity of the place in the long term. Qualities, also not just short-sighted qualities or short-sighted improvements, but also specifically for long-term improvements. And I think like Link, you did the project in Oslo, which showed quite clear results on that it, like Akersbrugge, that it improved quite a lot, like both when it comes to like the real like hard money, real estate values or income from the retail sector, but also just visitors passing by or people using the space.
I think you can also, talking about the SDGs, you can take a kind of circular economy perspective on places, that you utilize the places you already have better instead of all the time building new places. So it's about using your resources wisely. Maybe you need to travel less if you have exciting places nearby. So there are ways to limit CO2 emissions by being more local in your usage of place, basically.
Exactly. And talking about the resources, now we have the book as a great resource. So what is going to be in the next step of Nordic placemaking?
We want to spread the love, basically. Get more people involved and interested and passionate about this. So we're doing a lot of like webinars where we're spreading this inspiration. We hope, and also, I mean, we are companies, so there's also a business model perspective on this, that we think that we can create interesting services on the back of this project. So, yeah.
And you're going to have webinars. You made the first one was amazing. So thank you so much. It was really inspirational. So when is the next one?
25th of August is the next one at 12 p.m. I think.
Cool. You memorize it.
Yeah, and it will be about safety and placemaking, right, Cornelis?
Yep. We will discover and explore this topic even more in depth.
Yes, and it's for free for sure.
Yeah, it's for free for sure.
You've been Swedish, though. We need to add.
Yeah.
Right. We will find other ways to spread it in English too.
Yes. So. Yes, of course. Well, thank you so much again. It was really, really interesting conversation.
Thank you so much.
And now I would like to finish this great episode that every one of you will give me one takeaway message and one hashtag.
Okay, I think the hashtag has to be Nordic placemaking, because it's sort of the hashtag we started for this project, and I think placemaking in the Nordics actually do have a Nordic twist. As a takeaway message, I think probably that placemaking creates a lot of social values, as we talked about, but it also creates financial values. So it's actually something a lot of property developers actually should be doing, I think, because it sort of creates great cities for us and it creates great values as well at the same time. It's not a contradiction.
I will not add another hashtag. We keep Nordic placemaking. You can add it 3 times in the message. But actually, the takeaway message, like placemaking, I think we should really embrace it more as a way of working here in the Nordics, because it's really about the places, and who doesn't want local places to be attractive, to be functioning well. So it's really something that we should start to work with, and like we ourselves, us 3, have learned a lot during this project, which was just 1 year. So if we really start to use this placemaking in urban planning and trying to create those lovable local places, it's going to be much better for everybody.
Yes. And Marcus, please, one takeaway message and maybe a new hashtag.
Same hashtag Nordic placemaking. I have a background in branding of places, so I'll do it in a slogan. And it's a cliche, but I would say just do it. We just need to get started. We just need to try out these things. And that first start is so important, to make those first experiences. And then you build on that and scale up. And we have seen so many municipalities that just did it, and then they realized that it wasn't that difficult, or it was difficult, but now we know how to deal with those challenges. So just get started.
Read the guidebook and just do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again. And so what is going to be the next step for you?
Continuing communicating and spreading the results, and helping and inspiring others to try out.
Please go, Cornelis.
For me, even more exploring placemaking, but I think it's often sometimes it's being questioned also that it can be contradiction, more people in a place versus safety. So I think myself would like to also dig more into this connection on how to really put those things together.
Yes, and Petra.
Well, I'm working as an architect as well, so we're practitioners. So we just want to go out and do it, like do all these wonderful projects and help creating better cities.
Yeah, I hope now after the summer we are back to the life in the city and just start doing things together.
Yeah, without social distancing sooner or later, I hope.
This COVID really put a limitation on placemaking in spaces, but I think it's going to be even more important now how we are going to use, or how we actually know, maybe not how we're going to use, but how we are going to program public spaces, or how we are going to plan for public spaces.
There's a unique chance now to apply placemaking in similar perspectives post COVID-19, because that would be more important than ever to make the best of the public spaces we have.
And I think people also started to travel differently, like by car instead of car, going sort of by bike or walking. So I think also we can possibly start reclaiming the streets a little bit more from the cars, which would be fantastic.
Yes. And I'm looking forward also to meet you after the summer to start the network here in Stockholm. Yeah, thank you so much again for giving your time, and thank you so much for creating this great guidebook.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, and have a nice summer.
Thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. Please follow Instagram and subscribe the YouTube channel for live talks. If you have any great story that makes our city smarter, please contact me. Urbanistica is being produced in collaboration with Landskapslaget that work with landscape architecture, urban planning and design based in Stockholm, and also the European Placemaking Network. I am Mustafa Sharif. Keep up the good work. Keep loving cities.